Well, no, everyone's trying to be better, and
Yeah,
so for example, we just played in the World Cup final in France, and it was a sort of an 8-week campaign, um, and in the final, the whole squad of 33 were fit and available for selection.
amazing.
In the week of the final, or the last 2 weeks of the semi-final and the final, we would have had, I don't know, 15 personal bests in the gym, and
Hang on,
some of those.
sorry, Nick. 2 weeks before the World Cup final, of your 33 plays, 15 of them hit a PB in the
Yeah,
gym.
or yeah,
Wow,
or the week of the final, and some of those
that's
guys
crazy.
have been All Blacks for 12, 13 years. So you're sort of
Wow.
like it sounds crazy, but it's not, because you were assembled for 2 months, um, eating, sleeping, training is in the with the most motivation ever for a 4-year cycle. So that's, yeah, I mean, that's sort of where we're at. The PBs aren't the important part. The important part is that we had 33 players training and available for the final for selection. So you've got competition, you've got opposition, and so the squad itself was very healthy, but also fit and strong. So that's sort of what we try to achieve. So it's not about putting people into boxes.
Mm.
Everyone's plan is different and it's unique to them. And often it's about making old injuries better, preventing injuries that you're at risk of getting, and at the same time improving your ability to apply force to the opposition or absorb force. So being strong and powerful. And then of course all the running fitness is sort of part of that puzzle.
Yeah. So I got so excited there, but usually, well, what I would think if you're working with athletes coming up to a World Cup, my thought was, I'd probably be a little bit more conservative, but you are being conservative, but because that's just where they're at. So it's not as if you're pushing the boat out much further. You just added a couple of percent because that's where the athlete was at.
Yeah, that's right.
And I would assume most strength and conditioning coaches, I'm hard for me to speak on behalf of everyone, would have gone with what I just said. Oh yeah, you wouldn't chase a PB 2 weeks before the World Cup. So that was so cool to hear you say that they're still just getting after it, and there's that level of motivation.
Well, it's motivation and competition, right? Like,
Yeah, brilliant.
like a big part of, in my opinion at least, a big part of getting um, improvements is about creating an environment where there is competition, there is motivation, and if the culture of the group's right, I don't have to do anything, mate. I've just got to put a program together, and they do the rest. And that's essentially what it's like. I reckon I've got one of the easiest jobs in the world because the motivation of the athletes is so high. Um, you know, often I stand back with a physio and the All Blacks. I'll stand back in a gym session. I'll just say to them, should we leave? Should we go get a coffee? Like we're not needed. Like and that sort of happens after about 4 or 5 weeks together. It's just running like clockwork, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's really all about your environment and how you create that. And so, if I'm having to shout at people or motivate people, then there's something wrong in your team. Um, if they're not wanting to do it for each other, and help each other, then you're never going to be successful.
Gilly, can you give us a snapshot into that weight room that day when the boys were hitting PBs 2 weeks before? Like, can you, when you say there's the healthy competition is, one of the key, I'm assuming that there might be some key players who are leaders and are pushing the boys along, and then there might be the guy who's joking. And could you give us a snapshot into that room in the weight room prior to the World Cup, those 2 weeks, with what's going on with the boys, that competitive nature?
Oh, you just, like, so let's say we're building up to a heavy single in the bench. The boys will be standing around the bench. There'll be 5 or 6 of them, and they'll be building up to their respective number, their respective weight for their single rep, and then one of them will say, "Oh, this will be a PB if I get it." So all of a sudden there'll be 7 or 8 of the boys around him, just egging him on, shouting, screaming, and I'm just standing over in the corner, just hoping he doesn't hurt himself, right? and
Fingers
and
crossed.
and exactly, and then they're helping them through it, and they're spotting each other, and it's just, and if they hit it, then everyone just erupts. It's just lots of energy and lots of excitement and a few high fives, and it's and that sort of, during a World Cup, that's what you're sort of wanting to get to. You wanted to peak for the finals, and I would think that out of our squad of 33, in that 3 weeks, the 3 finals, we had quarterfinal, semi-final, final. A lot of the group would have hit a PB in something in that 3 weeks, whether that's their explosive power, whether that's their bench press strength, whether that's their chin up strength, whether that's their snatch. Everyone has different sort of numbers they were trying to improve, or opportunities. I remember way back in 2015, actually, Conrad Smith, midfielder for the All Blacks, just a skinny white fella, but could run all day, didn't have an explosive bone in his body. And World Cup final, his last week in the All Blacks, and he PB'd his bench press, and I think he might have benched 115, 120 kilos. And it just made his week. We won the World Cup final, so that would probably have been a little bit better than his bench press PB, but he got a bench press PB, mate, and he wouldn't, he'll remember that forever. I was the strongest I've ever been in the World Cup final that we won, so pretty cool.
In his acceptance speech for the World Cup, he just wanted everyone to know, hey guys, I did a PB.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just as a point of reference, and it's probably not important. It's interesting you brought up Conrad Smith. I interviewed, I think it was about episode 91, Davey Gray. That he's the mindset coach for the Hurricanes, the Wellington Hurricanes. He's also their strength and conditioning coach. And he brought up Conrad Smith as well. And because I was just asking him about the hard work ethic of these highly successful athletes, and he chose Conrad, and he shared a day of, it was terrible New Zealand weather. It was rainy, it was cold, and there was no one there. And then Conrad Smith came in and said to David Gray, can you hold the stopwatch for me or something? And Dave was like, what's going on? And he said, I'm going out to do my sprints. And he was the only bloke on the pitch. He said the weather was terrible, and Dave was like, that was just Conrad Smith. His hard work, which I'm sure they all are, his hard work ethic was just amazing.
Yep, no, absolutely. Yep. One of the greats, mate. One of the greats.